right, got that on. Ciao, this is Marc Marcantonio. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about knowing hooks, particularly treble hooks. Talk a little bit about some of the features and ways to select them, what to look out for and what to stay away from. So first of all, let me mention I just changed the hooks on this Lucky Craft and added premium hooks, Gamakatsu hooks that I'll talk about in a little bit. But first I want to explain something about treble hooks that a lot of people don't seem to realize. A treble hook does a really good job of sticking a fish when a fish bites or strikes at your lure. What they don't do so well of is landing the fish. So treble hooks have a tendency that when a fish has grabbed them, it's not hard for a bass or any other type of fish to actually put pressure on one tine, which causes the tine to be stuck to come out. It uses the leverage of one tine to free itself from the point on the other tine. So the more you let a fish jump, the more you let it have its head shake around, twist in the water, the more chances are you're going to lose that fish if you're using a treble hook because of that leverage that they can apply against the other tine. So that's one of the important things to figure out about treble hooks to begin with. Single hooks, you have a much higher landing ratio because there's no other tine to provide leverage to pry that hook out of the fish. So what can you do? Well, the most important thing is to use the proper size, the proper shape, and the proper sharpness on your hooks to make sure that the odds are tipped into your favor, that the balance is towards your favor. So when I first started fishing reaction baits, I had to basically hand sharpen every tine on every treble hook on the old carbon steel treble hooks that came on crankbaits. Originally, crankbaits were pretty expensive for manufacturers to actually produce, and every manufacturer out there seemed to spend a lot more money shaping the crankbait or making the body and lip of the crankbait, and then when they got around to putting hooks on, they went cheap and put the cheapest hooks they could on there. Luckily, we don't have to deal with that nowadays. Now we've got premium hooks that are available from several different manufacturers. I like to use Gamakatsu. I've been using their hooks for many, many years. And so now we can pick up premium quality treble hooks to change out the stock hooks that are on crankbaits and jerk baits and topwaters for that matter. When we started out, all you could get were round bend hooks, and round bend hooks work very well in most cases. And the Gamakatsu round bend hooks were much sharper than anything else out there, which made it a no-brainer to start switching out hooks to round bend Gamakatsus. Then they made the round bends even better because they came out with a short shank version, which allowed you to use one size larger, generally speaking, in your hooks and still be able to keep the hooks from tangling with each other because of the length being too long. If you go to a larger size hook than the stock hook on many crankbaits or jerkbaits or topwaters, the hooks will tangle, and then you're spending your time untangling your hooks and having a lure that doesn't run properly, which is not a good situation. So short shank treble hooks fixed that problem and allowed you to still upsize. The next thing to come along that was really a big improvement in the success I had with crankbaits and jerkbaits especially was the use of the EWG treble hook. Gamakatsu came out with an EWG treble hook, and the EWG treble hook is like what I have on this Lucky Craft flat CBDR right here. And the thing that's different about the EWG is two main differences. I don't know if you can see this, but the point of the hook is angled towards the eye of the hook. It's actually bent in and points towards the eye of the hook. And the reason why that is helpful is because if a fish comes up and engulfs that lure, any forward movement of the lure setting the hook, pulling it with your line, when that point is in line with the eye of the hook, then every bit of force that you're applying when you set the hook is driving that point straight into the fish, into its flesh. so you get easier and deeper penetration on the hook point. So it takes less force to drive that hook point past the barb on an EWG style hook. So even if they only get one hook in them and they turn their head and start fighting and the other hook slaps against them, as soon as you put tension on that lure, that other hook gets driven in as well. And getting myself stuck here. And these hooks are, in my opinion, just a top quality hook to use for crankbaits and also for jerkbaits, because in both cases, these EWG hooks tend to hold the fish a lot better. So the key is it lands more fish, gets them into your boat, and if you're a tournament fisherman, converting those strikes and fight into fish in live wells usually means a lot better payday at the end, rather than standing in line at the weigh-in giving stories to your friends about the ones that got away. You could be collecting their checks. So the other good advantage of the EWG hook is, if you notice the bend of the hook, it's a wider and deeper bend, sharper angle at the top of the bend. So this bend up top curves down and makes a little hook that basically, when you pin that hook into the fish, that hook helps keep the hook embedded in the fish. Doesn't give it a lot of room to shake loose. So that is another feature of it that makes them easier to land the fish with. So those are EWG hooks. Like I say, I like to use them on crankbaits and I like to use them on jerkbaits. But then Gamakatsu came out with an even better hook, a more premium hook than the EWGs. And that's the Gamakatsu G Finesse hook. The G Finesse hook is better for several reasons. And it is more expensive. You're going to pay for the features. But if you can afford it, this hook will definitely put more fish into your live wells as well, for several reasons. First off, the wire is a tournament grade level wire. It's thinner and stronger. So even though it's thin, you're not giving up any strength. This number 3, size number 3, which is what I just put on this crankbait over here, is probably the most common size that you'll use. And most crankbaits come with a number 4 treble hook, a number 3 being one size larger. And you can get by with this larger number 3 because the hook is lighter and it's sharper, and consequently, because of that, you're going to be able to get a better hook set on your fish, hook more of the fish that are hitting your lure, and the wire is still strong enough to be able to land them just as strong as if you were using the regular type wire on an EWG. So because of that, one of the reasons that I really like to use it, particularly on a crankbait, for instance, that's really buoyant, like this Lucky Craft BDS RTO 2.0, the reason that this lure works so well, for one reason, is because it's very buoyant, because it has a lot of air in it. Well, that buoyancy gives it a lot of wiggle action on the retrieve, which is what is attractive to the bass. If you're using a lightweight treble hook like the G Finesse series hooks, that weight improves the action of the lure because it doesn't have as much of a weight trying to put drag on the lure and keep it from being able to move quickly. And that's especially important if you're using it on a lightweight, small jerkbait like this Pointer SP, which is a 78mm Lucky Craft SP. And you'll notice I've got the G Finesse hooks on it. And these G Finesse hooks on the Pointer SP, I've actually gone up 2 sizes on this. Instead of tiny number 5 hooks that this typically comes with, I put number 3 G Finesse treble hooks on this. And because they're lightweight, the lure still has plenty of action, and you're not giving up any of the action or attractiveness of this lure, but you've got a much bigger bite hook so that you can land those 6, 7, 8 pounders on clear lake. You'll be able to land them with this because of the larger bite. You'll be able to get that hook deep into the fish. So that's why I like to use them. The other reason that makes the tournament grade wire so good is because it is thin. It is much sharper. The hook point is smaller diameter and much sharper. These hooks will grab everything, and you can tell a premium hook is good versus a stock hook, because when you put it on your fingernail, it digs right in and it won't slide across your fingernail when you put pressure on it. That tells you your treble hook is sharp enough for tournament use, and that's what you want in a treble hook. So lightweight, tournament grade wire. The other thing is it's got a G-Finesse coating on it. It's got a nano coating, which keeps it from corroding and also makes it a little slicker and allows less force to drive that hook deep into the fish. So these are some of the features of today's modern hooks. Now, here's one of my favorite Lucky Craft lures that not many people use or seem to know about, and it's the Slim Shad D9. And if you look at this one, I put a number 1 size G-Finesse hook on the belly, and I've got the number 2 G-Finesse hook on the tail. And that number 1 G-Finesse hook is huge, considering the thickness of this bait. So the tines stick way out. Anytime a big bass grabs this lure, or any size bass grabs this lure, they get a hook point in them. And that helped me catch and land a 7-pound plus smallmouth out of Lake Washington not too long ago on this crankbait. Because of that big hook, I was able to keep control of that big fish, and it couldn't get enough leverage to get the hook points out. So going to a larger size hook when you can without ruining the action of the lure is a great way to improve your success. Here's another model, the LV500, in which I put bigger hooks on it too, the G-Finesse hooks on this, and they still have the strength and the big bite which you need. I use this one up at Clear Lake a lot, and when you're getting into those 8-pound plus largemouth in the weed beds and you're ripping this out of the weed beds, that hook will still hold a big fish even though it's light wire, so it allows you to go bigger. I've got a bigger one on the belly. I've got a number 4 on the tail. I've got the number 2 on the belly on this one, and it still runs properly in the water, still has great action and great hooking power. On Topwaters, you do want to use a round bend hook, and this is a old school Gamakatsu bronze round bend that I put on my Sammy's Topwaters. Here, because the fish are coming up from the bottom and hitting the lure, it's harder for them to engulf the entire lure. So oftentimes they hit it and get stuck as the lure is slipping out of their mouth. And that's where a round bend hook works better than an EWG. You need the tine to actually be tilted out a little bit, and that more quickly catches the fish as it's trying to grab the lure or just slashes at it. Now, I've improved on the old school round bend trebles on this. With this Sammy, I put the G-Finesse round bend trebles. And again, you can go up one size. That way you can make sure that one tine or the other is always wider than the body of the lure at the point where the points are. And that way, no matter which angle the fish hits it at, or if it tends to roll, it'll push one tine into the flesh and stick the fish. And very sharp hooks. You'll catch a lot of fish that just slap at it with these round bend G-Finesse hooks. Very good to use. On a gunfish that I like to use for smallmouth, particularly on the Columbia River, I upsized my hooks too, put the G-Finesse hooks on there, and this is just a killer bait that hooks smallmouth right and left and lets you get them into the boat. Now, there are a couple other things you can do too. Gamakatsu also makes the hooks in a red finish, and they make a black, non-shiny black. They make a bronze color. So you have a couple different choices. And if you want to get creative on some of my Topwaters and some of my crankbaits, I like to put some red on them. And a red hook in a Gamakatsu is still sharp, and you can get the red hooks in both the round bend and the EWG style. And then another thing that really helps is when you're fishing topwater poppers, Gamakatsu also makes a feathered hook that you can add to your poppers like this, and that really helps, particularly when you pop it and you let the popper sit still on the water for a moment. This hook falls, the feathers make it fall slowly, they flare out, and bass, particularly smallmouth bass, stare at that and they just can't stand it, and they come up and nip at it. And because they come and nip at it, you really need to have sticky, sharp hooks. If a standard feathered treble just won't catch those fish, they'll spit it out and you'll lose them, and you'll keep wondering, why am I not hooking these fish? Sharp hooks, that's what's going to make the difference. So hopefully that gives you some insight on treble hooks and how to apply some of the different features. And if you have any questions, read the article that's attached with this. One other point I'll show you that I should mention also is about these G-Finesse treble hooks. If you look at my last two articles in westernbass.com, Knowing Hooks Part 1 and Knowing Hooks Part 2, you'll hear me talk about an O'Shaughnessy bend single hook. And the old school O'Shaughnessy bend hooks fish a lot better and keeps them hooked when you're trying to land them. Well, the same feature is actually incorporated into these G-Finesse treble hooks. These G-Finesse treble hooks are a O'Shaughnessy bend, and it's basically 3 single O'Shaughnessy bend hooks attached together to make a treble hook. So that bend also helps keep the fish pinned better than a full round bend does, and it gives the fish less leverage for being able to dislodge the hook. So that's another feature that many haven't realized about the G-Finesse treble series hooks. So hope that helps.